My name is Julie, and I am 30 years old and work at an investment firm. Of course, it's a foreign company. My husband James is a civil servant. We got married 2 years ago, but he's on an irregular contract. Because the contract renews every fiscal year, the end of the year always fills us with anxiety. His parents are former prefectural employees, and his sister is a current city office worker. So, their family has the sentiment public employees are the best. They appear to look down on me working for a private company. Since our marriage, we have been living with his family, and not just his sister. Even his parents constantly belittle my job. Aren't you ashamed to be employed by foreigners? Investment firms are all about making money, aren't they? People working in private companies are those who couldn't become civil servants. Moreover, people working in foreign companies are those who had no choice but to work there because they couldn't get a job at a domestic company, right? These people think that civil servants are the most admirable. My husband, who grew up in this environment, shares the same mindset. Therefore, even though he is a contingent worker, he clings to his job, which guarantees his status and salary. One time, I asked my restless husband at the end of the fiscal year, "Isn't it more secure to be a regular employee at a normal company than to work as a non-regular public servant?" "If I'm not a civil servant, it's better not to work at all." It seems like my husband has not told his parents that he is working as a non-regular civil servant. So, he keeps nagging me to keep this a secret. Furthermore, because of his pretentious character, he brags about having been promoted. It's a lie I can't understand at all, but my husband wants to maintain his position as a brother by keeping up appearances to his parents and sister. He doesn't show me his salary statement, but a very small amount is deposited into the account. Since James is a section manager now, his salary must have increased, right? How much is it now? My husband, at a loss for words, quickly responded with the amount of my salary. Surprised father-in-law said, "You can't earn so much these days." I know that my salary is quite high, but I don't know how much a section chief level civil servant earns. I am a bond trader. Most of my salary is commission-based, but recently I have been consistently making profits. So compared to general company employees, I am quite a high earner. Hearing the amount of money my husband mentioned, my mother-in-law said, "I can't simply compare it with our time, but it seems James is living up to expectations," she said with pride. His sister, who also works at the city office, heard our conversation. "If it was the city office, he might be at the division head level. The prefecture office sure does pay well, huh?" Looking at everyone's reactions, my husband seemed even more uncomfortable. He seemed to regret telling them about my salary and quickly changed the topic. "Let's drop the talk about salaries. The other day, someone from the housing company came by. Are we thinking of doing some renovations to this house?" A sales representative from a housing company had indeed come by. Anticipating my husband's thought process, I decided to play along with the topic of home renovations. About remodeling the kitchen, we are... My mother-in-law cut me off, yelling, "Don't interfere in family matters. You're just a daughter-in-law. Be quiet. You should do as you are told." My mother-in-law glared at me with a frightened expression. She always seems dissatisfied with my actions and words. The primary reason for her discontent seems to be that I'm not a public servant, and the fact that I take my husband's entire salary and give him an allowance seems to particularly irk her. My mother-in-law believes my husband convinced that he is making a fortune. She has concluded that I am controlling his salary. In reality, most of my husband's salary is spent on his pocket money, and our living expenses are almost entirely covered by my salary. As for my sister-in-law, she contributes nothing towards living expenses. You are taking living expenses from an old couple that only receives a pension? James is making so much, so you are not struggling, right? She declares with no intention of contributing. Living in my husband's family home means we don't have to pay rent, and we can get by on my salary alone. However, the situation is undeniably unfair. Unable to participate in the conversation about the housing company, I quickly cleaned up after the meal in the kitchen. Neither my mother-in-law nor sister-in-law lifts a finger to help with the housework. After finishing work, I rush back home and prepare meals, clean, and do laundry without a moment's rest. One of the benefits of working for a foreign company is that as long as I perform, there's no overtime. The fact that I can leave work on time is a blessing. I can separate work and private life, and I don't have to bring work home, which is a great perk. On his days off, my husband works on his computer at home. I worry if it's okay to bring work data home and work on it these days. When I try to ask my husband about it, I can't work overtime, and if I don't finish within the deadline, I get yelled at. Don't interfere, it's none of your business. Ironically, I was the one getting scolded. My husband has been in a bad mood lately, and he flares up as soon as I start talking. He even yelled at me when I tried to inquire about the housing matter. It's none of your business. Didn't Mom tell you that already? Just follow the rules. That's all you need to do. Despite handling the household chores and finances in this home, I am dissatisfied with my husband's attitude of not telling me anything. One day, a person from the home builder arrived at my in-laws' home with a computer. Everyone but me started discussing floor plans and sat in front of the housing CG. When I tried to take a peek while serving tea, "You don't need to look. Go away," she yelled at me. I was surprised to find out that they are planning on building a new house, not renovating it. My father-in-law had been talking about rebuilding the house as it was getting cramped. It seems that was true. My in-laws, who had quit their public service jobs, have a lump sum of retirement money. I suppose they plan to use that money to build a new house. And since I moved in, they've been living on a pension, but they don't pay any living expenses, so they should have plenty of money. I decided to distance myself from this matter. What concerns me is whether my sister-in-law intends to live in the new house as well. My 28-year-old sister-in-law could get married, but there's no talk of that, so I guess she'll live in the new house. I despise her as much as my mother-in-law for not helping with any chores and constantly complaining. I wish she would get married already, but my father-in-law told the home builder, "My daughter might get a husband. Can't we add another room? I'd like a house where my son, my daughter, and her husband, and we can live. 3 households." Surprised to hear that my sister-in-law's husband might also live with us, and more importantly, not my son's family, but just my son. I was surprised that I was not included. The house they are about to build should be quite large, but no matter how you look at it, the current site won't accommodate 3 households. Since my in-laws and sister-in-law are the ones building the house, I can't say anything. But I think the cleaning will be difficult. The men went out to see the model room and the construction site later. "You are staying at home. You are not involved." Mother-in-law spitefully threw out those words. She probably expected me to retort. She glared at me with an unamused look when I didn't. It seems that the housing construction is progressing. I am not given any information, but my in-laws and sister-in-law have started preparing for the move. Seeing my husband doing nothing. Aren't you going to prepare for the move? Why should I? Aren't you the one doing it? Upon hearing me speak as if it were someone else's business, my husband got angry. I am at a loss as to why he is getting angry, when I don't even know when or where we are moving. Afterward, I started preparing for the move whenever I found time, but I packed my husband's and my belongings separately. I was fed up with my mother-in-law's attitude and was also feeling suspicious towards my husband due to the new house matter. When I tried to confirm the moving day with my husband, "Just get ready, you don't need to know." That's all he would say. From the conversation during meal times, I understood that the move was probably soon, but strangely, they are not telling me their daughter-in-law anything. Not telling me anything, do they think I'm just a housemaid? I only found out about the move when the movers arrived. As I hurriedly started cleaning up the breakfast dishes. "Leave them as they are. We can just buy new ones. By the way, do you plan to move into the new house with us?" At that moment, I realized that they are excluding me from consultations about the new house's floor plan, and not telling me about the moving day was all to kick me out of the in-laws' house. My husband, laughing behind my mother-in-law, didn't say anything. He probably shares the same thoughts. That being said, the reason why I packed my things separately from my husband was that I had anticipated this would happen. Seeing me unfazed, "I hate you. From now on, it's going to be only the family living here. Do as you please." Mother-in-law yelled with a dissatisfied face. My sister-in-law, who was watching with a bored expression, must have thought I would beg to come with her while crying. My mother-in-law, dissatisfied with my reaction. "A parasitic daughter-in-law who relies on kids' earnings should get out right now. The new house will be built by James. He will repay the loan with his salary. So we don't need a parasite." She yelled this with a red face. I was the one who was trying to leave. Hearing that the mortgage repayment would come from my husband's salary, I nearly burst out laughing. It seemed that my husband hadn't heard about repaying the mortgage from his salary, from his mother. He couldn't hide his surprise, but he seemed to realize that he couldn't speak the truth in front of his angry mother, so he just stared down and froze. From his reaction, it seemed that his parents believed they wouldn't use their retirement money, and that their extravagant son would build a new house by repaying the loan. I became interested in how the loan repayment would proceed in the future, and informed them with a smile. "Understood. I will proceed with a divorce from James. You all please go ahead and move to the new house." My mother-in-law didn't like my reaction and started shouting something, but she was pulled away by my father-in-law and sister-in-law and left the in-laws' house. To my husband, who was left behind, "I will bring the divorce papers later, so please tell me your new address. I'm sure it's a magnificent house. Since I haven't been informed at all, I would like to see it once." When I told him happily, my husband reluctantly told me the address. My belongings were few, so I had them transported by a friend. After that, I switched all the public utility bills of my in-laws' house to my husband's name. I returned to my parents' house for the time being, and once I was settled, I went to the address given by my husband to get his signature on the divorce papers. The new house where my husband and his family lived was indeed a three-family house, and it was large and impressive. As soon as my mother-in-law saw me, she rushed over to me. "Parasitic daughter-in-law, what are you here for?" she shouted with an awful look on her face. But I ignored her and asked my husband to sign the divorce papers. Mother-in-law said to my husband, who was signing the divorce papers, "Useless wife. It's because she's not a public servant. Sign it quickly." Turning to my mother-in-law, I said, "What a wonderful house. Are you sure you can afford it with James' salary?" Speaking in a sarcastic tone, my mother-in-law's face turned red with rage. "You are an outsider now, so don't worry about us. Take the divorce papers and leave quickly." I wanted to look at my husband's pale face a little longer, but I picked up the divorce papers and left immediately, keeping an eye on my explosive mother-in-law. I went straight to the municipal office to submit them and decided to look for a new house for myself. I was tired from married life after this incident and decided to live alone in a one-room apartment for a while. The property near my workplace met my needs, so I moved immediately and started my new life. It's so comfortable now that there are no roommates who brag about being public servants or dumping chores on me. Just as I was beginning to forget about my husband, I suddenly received a phone call from an unknown number. "I can't pay the loan. Julie, would you come back to me? I'm calling from a friend's cell phone. I can't pay not only the mortgage, but also the electricity and water bills. My cell phone has also been disconnected." My ex-husband spoke through his tears. I thought he could ask his parents and sister for help, so I said, "Your sister is a full-time civil servant. Your parents are retired civil servants, and they must have a lot of retirement money, right? They also have a pension." When I coldly brushed him off, my husband hesitantly replied, "The truth is, both of them have no retirement money left. My sister has debts and has no spare money." Listening to my husband, it seems that their retirement money was almost wiped out due to investment fraud, and his sister, who had been living with her parents, had amassed a considerate debt by paying in installments for shopping. Perhaps the reason why my mother-in-law, who works for an investment company, harbored hostility towards me was because she had been a victim of investment fraud. After that, they probably wanted to show that they were living a better life than others by buying luxury goods, whether it was the pride of being a public servant or not. It turns out that his parents also have debts, and their pensions are being used to pay them off. I didn't know that his sister, who was still young and had only brand name items, had bought them all on credit. "Actually, I lost my job." The reason his contract was not renewed was because it was discovered that he had been working from home with data he had taken from work. Of course, that would happen if he took out confidential data. I wish he had realized when I warned him, but it's too late now. However, I thought that life of the in-laws' house without my salary would be very hard, whether my ex-husband was working or not. My ex-husband was not honest about being a non-regular public servant. The in-laws were keeping it a secret that they had lost their retirement money to a scam, and the sister-in-law was keeping it a secret that she was in debt. Everyone in this proud civil servant family had nothing to hide. When I was still living there, they might have been able to cover it up, but now that they've moved to a new house, they can't manage their lives and seem to have called me out of desperation. Of course, I had no intention of getting back together with them. I declined and hung up the phone. After that, the phone rang many times, but when I kept ignoring it, the calls eventually stopped. Later, when I visited their new house, I saw a for sale sign. There happened to be someone from the housing company there, so I couldn't help but ask what had happened to the in-law family. It turns out they sold the house immediately after it was newly built, but it seems they still have a loan. The man from the housing company also said, "I was surprised by that family. Despite their bragging, they said they would sell immediately. if they couldn't repay the loan. Because a relative was a co-signer, it seems to have caused some trouble. He spoke with a baffled expression on his face. Since a relative had co-signed when they took out the loan, it seems that the relative had to take over the debt. When this became known, given their past bragging about being civil servants, it seems they are now being shunned by their relatives. After all, it's no wonder, given that they are causing trouble for a relative who works in a private company by having them co-sign. As I relaxed on the sofa at home, I laughed at the ridiculousness of imagining what my ex-husband and his family, who now had no one to brag to about being civil servants, and were being treated as a nuisance by their relatives, might be doing now.